The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
If you look at the history and you look at what's happened to us, you go to certain places, go to Asia, and you take a look at every single country in Asia, what they've done to the United States in trade. And by the way, in military in a certain way. You look at, take a look at trade with Asia, and I wouldn't say anybody is treated as fairly or nicely, but we are going to treat them. We're going to be much more generous to them in terms of heart. We're going to be much more generous than they were to us.
The Trump administration isn't getting pushed around by big business. We want companies to make money, but not at our expense. And the same goes for other countries. We respect our allies, but they'll be made to respect us.
For 40 years, a lot of our friends all over the world have used America as a piggy bank. They have used us to absorb all of their excess economic production. And what does that mean for Americans? For Americans, that's meant manufacturing jobs declining. That's meant middle-class wages going down. That's meant whole towns that have been hollowed out by empty factories. And that means an America that is less safe because our manufacturing isn't as powerful now as it was 30 years ago. The days of America being the piggy bank of the world, the days of closed factories, the days of people not being able to get a middle-class job in this country, they're over.
America didn't start the trade war. The world did. And we haven't even been fighting it until now. China knows it, Europe knows it, and so does Canada. And we love the Canadians, but they're fighting a war they can't win. And being friendly to the world is what got us in this mess. We're not in high school. We don't need friends. Every country puts their interests first. And when our interests align, we can do business. And when they don't, that's life.
Lots of truth there in the cold open. As an American, it's hard not to applaud this. But how does the rest of the world view this? How is the rest of the world going to respond? And most importantly, what does your Bible say about how this ends? You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/trumpetdaily. The email address, if you'd like to submit feedback, td@thetrumpet.com. So just to refer you to the latest Trumpet magazine, Up in Arms. I mean, we're living in a dangerous new age. And I made the point last week, I know, about how when you hear any of the Trump officials talk about, well, any subject, what's going to happen is 100% positive in the end. We're living, though, in a world that's realigning. And so many, I'll read you the receipts in just a moment. They're all over the place, these headlines. There's actually a headline at the BBC. See if I can jump to it pretty quickly here. But it talks about Germany moving away from its past. Where is it? Germany decides to leave history in the past and prepare for war. Okay? That's the BBC. This is not The Onion. It's not the Babylon Bee. This is the BBC, Britain, saying about Germany, yeah, they're ready to leave their past and to prepare for war. That's page 7 of my notes. That's a pretty huge story. There's so many headlines. And tomorrow's news, the headlines for tomorrow, they're always in the Trumpet magazine. Up in arms, that's what we're living in. A world that is up in arms. We've got the article in there on Does Donald Trump Know the Way to Peace? Here you've got all these peace deals just blowing up. And then you've got the Trump administration pointing out that, yes, the world started the trade war decades ago. And here's what we're going to do to make it fair, to make it balanced. But how does the world like that message? I mean, we've been all year in the Life and Teachings of Christ, wonderful study. I mean, you can't get deep enough into the Gospels. But all year long, I've been amazed at how much truth Jesus Christ kept just hammering away to these people, his disciples, to Pharisees, Sadducees, Herodians, Samaritans. He was dropping one truth bomb after another. And how did the world receive it? I mean, just because you have the truth, it doesn't mean it might end, it doesn't mean that it can't end well. Look at how it ended for Christ. Now, and as you obviously know, that was a good ending in the spiritual sense. But in the physical sense, look at the way the world received Jesus Christ's message. They rejected it. They plotted to murder him. They aligned against him. I'm not comparing the Trump administration to Christ's ministry. I'm just saying that even if it has a lot of truth, your Bible still says that nations are going to align against the United States. That's what we fail to see. Listen to Peter Navarro as he talks about the trade policy for the Trump administration. Clip 8.
Here's the problem. It's a national security problem, and it goes something like this. We've got 16 million cars we buy every year. Half of those are imported with virtually no American content. And the other half, Shannon, 50% of that is foreign content. And it even gets worse because what the Germans and the Japanese and the South Koreans are doing is they're turning this country from a manufacturing nation into an assembly nation. What the Germans and Japanese do is they send us the most important high value added, high wage parts of the car here for us to assemble. 19%, only 19% of the cars we drive here and buy each year have American engines and transmissions. Okay. Germany and Japan alone account for 50% of that. So what we're trying to do is get back our manufacturing capability.
We're trying to get our manufacturing capability back. Again, as an American, what do you find? How do you find fault with that? Now, at the same time, Navarro's out there this weekend talking about how that the tariff, all these tariffs, Liberation Day is coming this week, April 2nd. All these tariffs are going to generate $10 trillion for the United States over the next 10 years. And that, though, is assuming that the other nations, America's opponents, don't band together to undermine America. Like I say, they're just throwing these figures out right and left. And again, they're having quite a lot of success at home with their domestic policies. You can see why, that they're confident. Confidence is in the air for sure. But it's assuming that everyone in the world wants to be friends and they want to be, on an even playing field with the United States. What a dangerous assumption that is. Speaking of the tariffs, this was Kevin O'Leary just talking about Canada. And here again, you've already heard it in the cold open, but he gets to the truth of why the radical leftist communist government in Canada is campaigning on a Get Trump message because they're trying to stay in power. That's why. This is clip 9.
The anti-U.S. rhetoric is being stirred up by Carney because his party
that's right.
devastated the country over the last 10 years. And the only way he can stay in power is to convince people he's the solution against Trump. So the rhetoric has never been hotter. And of course, he's 5 weeks away from an election. So he'll stir the pot any way he can. But let's not forget where Carney came from. He is a global elitist. He's a supporter of carbon taxes. He said he'll remove them from consumers, but he's going to double down on business in Canada. And that decimated. You got to remember, Canada actually only grew under the Liberal Party 1.4% in 10 years. The economy's been wiped out. One of the reasons Canadians can't go to Florida is his party wiped out the value of the dollar, down 41%. Canadians can't afford to go to Disneyland anymore.
he's rightly pointing out that it's Canada's government, that's this party, Carney's party, the past 10 years, that has ruined the country, that has put so much of the country under bitter affliction. And so they, like so many in the world, are campaigning on get Trump. That's what so many of the, not just small nations of the world, big, powerful nations, when they band together. This is what the Trump administration doesn't see. If they band together, they hold the Trump card. No pun intended. That's right. There is strength in numbers. You pull together Europe, for example. You already see Russia moving more to China and Iran. As I say, the world's realigning. They are realigning. The latest trumpet trade wars are here. I mentioned that last week. Germany's looking for a new Charlemagne. That's all in the latest issue of the Trumpet magazine. Angry German voters, Germany taking over the Mediterranean. I mean, these are headlines that you're not seeing around the world. It's here first. And then eventually you come around and you'll turn on the BBC and you see there, oh, Germany's letting go of its history and preparing for war. Who was telling you this for decades? The fact that Germany was preparing for war. For the longest time, they were doing it behind the scenes, behind closed doors. Now it's out in the open. The Financial Post. As U.S. stock prices tumbled this month, the fund manager at Frederick Herms noticed something strange. The dollar, long a go-to hiding place during market sell-offs, wasn't rallying this time as investors rushed for safety. It was sinking too, and fast, as hot money poured into gold, the yen, European stocks, almost anywhere but the U.S. This is the Financial Post. What happens when the world bands together and abandons the dollar? Talk about some leverage. Talk about a trump card. And here again, we've been talking about this for decades. It's unusual and very telling. The dollar has dropped against all but a handful of the 31 major currencies over the last 3 months. Further on, it says here, as opposed to being the usual bastion of stability, the first choice haven for foreign exchange market operators, the greenback instead now stands as quite the opposite, says Michael Brown, a senior research strategist in London for Pepperstone, one of the largest currency brokerages. He said an increasing number of clients are asking, where should I be looking at as opposed to just switching on the autopilot and hiding in the dollar? Where can we go besides the dollar? It's a pretty big story, I'd say. You look at all of the successes for the Trump administration these past 2.5 months. These are some ominous signs. It says, at the same time, Trump's clashes with European allies over the cost of defense has unleashed a surge of spending by Germany that could stoke the region's economy. That's fueled a European stock rally this year that hasn't delivered double-digit gains, which may cause investors to shift cash from the U.S. Further on, it says here, if that money flees as people begin to doubt the geopolitical and economic fundamentals of the U.S., you could get the dislocations that would force the U.S. stock market lower and the dollar as well. So you can't just look at all of these developments. You can't just consider all these truth bombs and say, well, yeah, this is going to end in a spectacular way for the United States. It's not that we're here trying to find a negative in every development. There is a lot of positive news to report. I mean, in my mind, what you heard there in the cold open, it's straight up true. The world has started the trade war with America. The world has, as J.D. Vance said there, the world has seen the United States as a piggy bank, open for everybody. And now that's changing. And guess what? The world doesn't like it. The world thinks that Donald Trump started all this. The world thinks that Trump is the problem. The world thinks that J.D. Vance is the problem. Germany thinks that America is the problem. Listen to this from Germany's ambassador to Canada, clip 7.
Your economy minister has said that it's really important to stand up to Donald Trump and not to back down. Why does Germany see that as so important, and how do you underline it?
Well, I think the words of the economy minister stand for themselves. It's very clear that none of us must be bullied. We have to defend our workers, our businesses, and have to show to the US that this is a battle that nobody can win. Everybody will lose at the end of it, and it will be US citizens and US businesses who will lose as well.
Everyone's going to lose if Trump keeps escalating this. Now, again, when you think of Donald Trump, his message, his agenda, as popular as it is with MAGA, think about how unpopular it is with the rest of the world. It's obviously very unpopular with the radical left here in the United States. But look at the rest of the world. He's, as I've said, he's doing a lot of things right, restoring some sanity to the government, to Congress, to D.C., to the swamp. But he's, whether it's intentional or unintentional, I mean, the outcome's the same. He's obviously not going forward thinking that this is going to lead to World War III, that we're going to go to war against Germany. Actually, vice versa. Germany, that's what the Bible prophesies, will come after the United States. I'll show you a YouGov poll here in just a second. 79% of Germans believe that Vladimir Putin is an enemy and he's a danger. 74% of Germans see Donald Trump as the same. So they've basically got the same opinion of Trump as they do with Putin. That's unbelievable. There's a verse, 2 Peter 2:19. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption, for of whom a man is overcome, of the same is he brought into bondage. We are taking steps toward a national disaster. We are. As unintentional as it might be, nobody's hoping for world war, but we're taking steps in that direction. You look at the way the world responds, the Mart of Nations, for example, this article from The Strategist, it's basically saying the world needs to form a Mart of Nations in opposition to the United States to keep Donald Trump in check. U.S. President Trump has shown a callous disregard for the checks and balances that have long protected American democracy. As the self-described king makes a momentous power grab, much of the world watches anxiously, aware of his administration's growing illegality and corruption is eroding not only the U.S. Constitution, but what remains of the post-1945 international order. He's disrupting the world, and he has to be stopped. Look at what the radical left did to try to stop him politically. They tried to murder him. They're still continuing with the lawfare, but they tried to destroy him through the courts. They lied. They cheated. They did anything they possibly could to try to prevent him from ever coming back. Well, now he's back. And what will the world do to try to stop him? It says here, the first step is to unite and make as much noise as possible. Imagine if all governments in the Americas, with a few exceptions, such as Argentina, denounced Trump's designs on the Panama Canal in Canada. Another option is for all the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and European Union governments to issue a joint statement. So basically, again, it's calling for a Mart of Nations. It's calling for the nations of the world to unite against America. It's so easy to just say, let's 25% tariffs, that means we'll generate this kind of revenue from European nations. This is what will come in from China. This is what will come in from Canada. $10 trillion for America over the next decade. Well, it's more than just, doing a math problem. The world is realigning against Donald Trump. Here's the Wall Street Journal. How a new axis called CRINK is working against America. This is from the Wall Street Journal. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have united to defy Western sanctions and undermine U.S. interests. There's stories that show Donald Trump's not happy with Putin right now. It's not working out, bringing peace, solving the war in one day. It didn't work out with Hamas and Israel. That peace agreement, that ceasefire, blew up. And now war has resumed. Here you've got Donald Trump. He's upset with Zelensky. He's upset with Putin. Nothing seems to be working or bringing peace. Here again, the latest Trumpet. Does Donald Trump know the way to peace? Does any man know the way? Isaiah 59 says that we don't. We don't know the way. I'll come to that later if we have time. It says here, cooperation between the four nations isn't new. Russia and Iran allied to support the Assad regime and so on. It says, but the war, speaking of Ukraine, multiplied those ties and helped knit the quartet together. So here you have a quartet that is forming in opposition to Trump, to U.S. interests. You've got Russia and China. I mean, this is significant. We've got a booklet, Russia and China in Prophecy. They're prophesied to band together. And right now it's together with North Korea and Iran. These are not exactly friends of the United States. Military cooperation has gone hand in hand with economic ties. Shut out by the West, Russia has redirected much of its energy exports to China, while Beijing, which doesn't support the U.S.-led sanctions against Moscow, has in turn stepped up exports of consumer goods that Russia no longer receives from the West. We talked about the Mart of Nations, this prophecy in Isaiah 23, just last week. It's prophesied. When they come together, it's going to be to oppose the bad orange man, of course. Listen to this from Fox News about just some of the failing peace deals around the world. Clip 5.
President Trump is criticizing both Russia and Ukraine. The president saying he would consider imposing secondary tariffs on Russia if he believes it were at fault for not reaching a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. This comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin called for a transitional government to replace Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
I was disappointed in a certain way. Some of the things that were said over the last day or two having to do with Zelensky, because he considers Zelensky not credible. He's supposed to be making a deal with him, whether you like him or you don't like him. So I wasn't happy with that. But I think he's going to be good. And I certainly wouldn't want to put secondary tariffs on Russia. But if they were put on, it would not be very good for that.
But the president is also criticizing Zelensky, who he says is now trying to reverse course on a rare minerals deal.
Things just don't seem to be working very well. Zelensky pulling out of the mineral deal, Putin not seeing Zelensky as a good actor to work with, to make a deal with. We got to make deals. That's who Donald Trump is. He's a deal maker. And some of these deals aren't working so well. Here's Fox News on Putin getting the upper hand, at least according to this commentary, clip 6.
Mike, I think President Trump has a right to sound frustrated because for two sides that should really want an immediate end to this war, they sure aren't acting like it, Mike.
Well, yeah, that's if your assumption is that Putin really wants an immediate end to this war. And I don't think that's necessarily what's going on here. So, honestly, I'm not surprised that Putin's dragging his feet. He feels that he's got the upper hand. He feels he's got all the cards here. And so I'm not surprised at his stance.
It's not surprising. He feels like he has the upper hand. There's another headline. I think this is AP. Ukraine ceasefire will send thousands of Russian troops to NATO borders. The Baltic states are warning this. So we can't have a ceasefire. We can't have peace. It's just going to make things more dangerous. This article from the BBC, it's astounding. Germany decides to leave history in the past and to prepare for war. And what's waking up Germany? Well, Putin and Trump. They're both the enemy. Germany's military, the Bundeswehr, recently got the all clear for a massive increase in investment after Parliament voted to exempt defense spending from strict rules on debt. I mean, usually Germany's very strict with respect to accumulating debt, but not so now with military spending. The country's top general has told the BBC the cash boost is urgently needed because he believes Russian aggression won't stop at Ukraine. We're threatened by Russia. We are threatened by Putin. We have to do whatever is needed to deter that, this guy says. It's not about how much time I need. It's much more about how much time Putin gives us to be prepared, said this defense chief. The sooner we prepare, the better. They've got to prepare for war with Russia. As I keep saying, even as we talk about peace, there's this massive buildup for war. It's exactly the way the Bible describes the last days. Read 1 Thessalonians 5. And when they say peace and safety is coming, just know sudden destruction is what will happen. This YouGov poll I mentioned earlier, it shows that 79% of Germans see Vladimir Putin as very or quite dangerous to European peace and security. And now 74% say the same thing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is very or quite dangerous to European peace and security. He's catching up to Putin. He's only 5 percentage points down. The survey followed a speech in Munich in which J.D. Vance laid into Europe and its values. And then it quotes this German commentator. That was a clear signal that something fundamentally has changed in the United States. See, America's the problem. The world doesn't look at these tariffs as evening things out. The world doesn't look at a 25% tariff as, well, it's only fair because we have kind of been ripping off the United States for a long time. They see it as an attack. They see Donald Trump as Orange Hitler. They see America as the problem. And as I read to you, they're already abandoning the dollar. Some disturbing signs on the horizon for America. And, Britain and Canada, Australia, they all should be concerned. In Berlin, Germans' traditional caution about all things military seems to be fading fast. Did you hear this? Their traditional caution about all things military is gone. It's fading fast. 18-year-old Charlotte Kreft says her own pacifist views have changed. The pacifists in Germany, they're no longer pacifist. She says, for a really long time, we thought the only way to make up for the atrocities we committed in World War II was to make sure it never happened again. This is an 18-year-old girl quoted in the BBC piece. And we thought we needed to demilitarize because of our past, because of our history, because of a war, a world war that we started, because of our atrocities. We thought never again. We thought we should never again militarize the nation of Germany. But now we're in a situation where we have to fight for our values and democracy and freedom. We need to adapt. Here's this 18-year-old girl speaking for Germany, and her sentiment Well, look at the YouGov poll. It's the same across the nation. Yeah, you got Putin as a dangerous threat, and then Trump's right here. He's right underneath Putin. There are lots of Germans who still feel strange about big investments in our military. Ludwig Stein agrees. But I think considering the things that have happened in the past few years, there's no other real option. We have to prepare for war, says Germany. There are no other options. Look at the dangerous threat that Putin is to our east, and look at the dangerous threat that Orange Hitler is to the west. Listen to this. It says the twin wake-up alarm of the Russian threat and an isolationist, disengaged U.S. is now ringing loudly for Germany, the general argues, and cannot be ignored. Now it's understandable to each and every one of us that we have to change. And guess what? The Trump administration, the MAGA movement, they encourage Elon Musk himself says that the only hope for Germany is the AfD, the far right party in Germany. And so they're being encouraged. And Germany's happy to respond to this encouragement. Oh, you want us to build up our military? Okay, sure, yeah. There's no other option. Speaking of Elon Musk, I think this was over the weekend, these Teslas that were burned outside of a showroom in Germany. Here's that report, clip 13.
We're seeing new dramatic video of 7 Tesla cars burning outside a showroom in northern Germany. So far, police have not confirmed the cause of the fires or connection to the international protests against Elon Musk. This comes as Tesla facilities are on alert as the hashtag Tesla takedown movement sparks global protests targeting the automaker. These are live pictures right now of protests in New York and D.C. Organizers say they're trying to send a message against Elon Musk's role in gutting entire U.S. government agencies and the mass firings of federal workers.
That's going on in Germany. They don't see Musk as an ally. They certainly don't see Donald Trump as an ally. What was it that gal said in the article I quoted? That, for the longest time we thought we had to demilitarize. But now, we've got to fight for our values. We've got to fight for democracy, say the Europeans. This article about Marine Le Pen in France. Banned from office. That's right. They actually carried out what the radical left tried to do to Donald Trump here in the States. They wanted to prevent him from ever running again. And because of some French court that hates Le Pen, of course, the EU hates Le Pen as well. So they went after her politically and destroyed her politically, preventing her from running for the democracy movement in Europe. It's so strong that we need a military to defend it. I don't think the democratic impulses of the European elites are always democratic. Let's just put it that way. Our news gatherer in Edstone, Richard Palmer, says that the court ruled that Le Pen's guilty of embezzlement using EU funds for running the EU Parliament branch of the party for running political campaigns in France. He says how crazy this is. Romania had a guy they didn't like, the EU. He won an election, so then they canceled the election, they arrested the guy, and they re-ran it. Now France does the same thing. In Europe, you can have democracy, Mr. Palmer says, but only if it chooses someone you like. That's the same exact radical leftist thinking that you see here in the United States. There are going to be some twists and turns, though, because, the strong man of Daniel 8, he's going to, by the way, he comes in by flatteries. He doesn't even come in by a democratic vote. That's what your Bible says about the European strongman. Read Daniel 8. Read Daniel 11. It's pretty amazing. when you see what they did to Le Pen. They don't want someone like that. Well, eventually they are going to get someone strong from the right. You look at what's changed as some of these articles bringing out just in the last few years. Donald Trump's only 2.5 months into this term. And when he's on Air Force One talking about a potential third term, what, again, you can laugh at this. Of course, the heads explode on MSNBC. But how must the world react to this? I read you one article where it says he's already doing king-like things and he has to be opposed. He has to be stopped. And what happens when the world realigns against America? Here he is on Air Force One, Donald Trump, talking about people wanting him to campaign for another term after this one's over. Clip 16.
I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way a fourth term because the other election, the 2020 election was totally rigged. So it's actually sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you want to know the truth. I think I'm popular because we've done a great job. I think we've had the best almost 100 days of any president. And most people are saying that. And it's an honor. We're bringing back our country. We're respected as a country again. And we're strongly respected. And people are amazed. I was with some very important people today, and they said that they've never seen a turnaround of a country as fast as this. Even look at our border. We have nobody coming in.
The president limits a president to 2 terms. Is it your understanding that they have to be?
I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just telling you, I have had more people say, please run again. I said, we have a long way to go before we even think about that.
And so you know how the radical left is going to react to this. He's had success. He's right. The border is closed. The border was secured within a week. And he's got more people than ever campaigning for it or urging him to go again. You'll remember when and he refers to the steal there, 2020. It's a miracle that he's back in power. And we were there for 4 years. You heard, it was a common refrain on this show. He's coming back somehow or another. He's coming back. Well, how can this happen? They stole it right out in the plain sight of day back in 2020. What's to stop them from doing it again? Well, God stopped them. God put him back in power. And Donald Trump has even admitted this. Certainly after July 13 last year. Just one little head tilt. God intervened to save his life. And then he put him back in power. And he's saying a lot of true things. And there's a lot of people that hate it. There's a lot of people that are trying to stop it. We said during that 4-year period that one reason God allowed the steal and removed Trump from office temporarily is so that God could expose the evil, so that God could expose the radical left and their takeover of the United States, their attempt to blot out even the name of Israel. As it says there in 2 Kings 14, we've got all this and more in America under attack. It's still worth your time to read through that. But listen to this from over the weekend. Elon Musk, he's on stage with one of his Doge workers. They're just trying to eliminate waste and fraud and abuse on the financial levels. But listen to what they learned about the Social Security numbers and all these illegals coming into the United States. This is clip 1.
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came up with a big list of stuff they're working on. You've heard some of that already. But this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, just this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident.
They went there to find fraud, and by accident, they found out that the illegals were being registered so they could vote. That's illegal, by the way. This is all, this is straight from the mind of the dear leader, Joebama. You know what else this proves? Along with so much of the other proof that we've regularly gone through on this show. It shows that they cheated in 2020. They will cheat to win any possible election they can, and they'll cheat in a variety of ways. They wanted think about all the Democrats we're not bringing them in so that they can be voters. They can't vote. You can almost hear Schumer or somebody like that saying it. That's a lie. We're not opening the border so that, and here comes Elon's team and they discover, yeah, that's exactly what was happening. Surprise, surprise. Miranda Devine says this is the biggest fraud in the history of this country. Biden, Mayorkas, Harris, Becerra, Blinken, Garland. The only one she forgot to mention was Obama. And whoever else orchestrated this needs to be prosecuted. Finally, Elon has given us proof of what we always suspected, that Biden deliberately brought in 10 to 20 million illegals to vote in our elections and turned the country permanently blue. How did Donald Trump ever return to office? Answer: God had to perform a lot of head tilts, a lot of miracles. So as I say, you see fulfilled prophecy. It's inspiring. It's inspiring. And then you hear one truth bomb after another coming from this courageous administration. That's somewhat inspiring as well. But then you have to consider other prophecies and how that it does not end well for the United States. We've got to tell you the truth. People can come along and promise liberty and freedom and maybe another term in office, trillions and trillions of dollars, tax cuts, lots of good things. But what does the Bible say about our nations in Isaiah 1 and elsewhere? There's a sickness there that needs to be healed. And only God, He's the only physician that can do it. Listen to clip 2. Again, this is Elon Musk along with someone else. I'm unsure of his name. Clip 2.
Once you're in the country and you got asylum through one of these pathways, and we mapped the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765. It's the work form. You get this form called the 766. That's the authorization. And then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security number. No interview. No ID.
This is worth just reiterating. It's not people sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep. No. They weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
A massive, large-scale program inviting in 10 to 20 million illegals. And then, like the guy before him said, they try to get a job or whatever, and then they're just automatically given a Social Security number. No ID, nothing needed. Just in the mail, through the mail. There you go. And once you get that, of course, you can vote. You can register to vote. Yeah, I'm legal. I've got a Social Security number to prove it. Miranda Devine says, Elon found illegals have registered to vote and did vote. Talk about voter fraud. This is being exposed. This happened in 2024. What does it tell you about what they did in 2020? All the mules, all the glitches. shutting down the count, going on and on for 5 days. I'll never forget how that week played out and how that so many talking heads quickly surrendered and capitulated to the radical left. And we're not going to talk about election fraud. We just can't do it. It was fair. It was fair. Joe Biden won fair and square. Democrats would never cheat. Here's a large-scale program to allow for massive cheating. Automatic Social Security numbers for illegal aliens, for non-citizens, so that they could go vote. And of course, most of them are going to vote Democrat because they're getting all the handouts. They're getting free hotel stays. They're getting free food. They're getting cash cards. They're getting everything from Joebama. It says this calls for a special counsel. Well, let me back up. Talk about voter fraud. This is Miranda Devine. That's why the Dems are, and their judicial proxies are fighting Trump and Homan so hard. This calls for a special counsel. Ken Paxton, for instance, that would be quite the special counselor, with special powers granted by Congress or the AG to hold selected public hearings on national security grounds so we can hear these Biden saboteurs testify under oath at risk of jail or perjury or contempt. There has to be justice. These people have to be held to account. That's what she's asking, calling for. Listen to more from Elon Musk's event over the weekend, clip 3.
Look, if I hadn't seen this myself, I'm not sure I'd have believed it. I went through it myself and mapped it, and Elon is right. This is true. The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people, and minimum collection. That's what's happening. We found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example. We've gone through, on every benefit program we went through, we found groups from this particular group of people, this 5.5 million people in those benefit programs. And then what was really, really disturbing us was why. We're asking ourselves why. Right. And so we actually just took a sample and looked at voter registration records. And we found people here registered to vote in this population, yes.
And who did vote?
And we found some by sampling that actually did vote. And we have referred them to prosecution at the Homeland Security Investigation Service.
Yeah.
Already, that is already happening right now.
Biggest fraud in the history of America. That's Miranda Devine. The biggest fraud. You think this would be, I mean, it generates some commentary on Twitter or X. But why is this not making headlines all over the world? It should be. How did Donald Trump get back in there? It was a miracle, that's how. Listen to one final clip, number 4.
The voter fraud is terrible, but the human tragedy this created is extraordinary, because what you don't understand, and people don't know, and Americans need to know, that's why I'm here, is that human traffickers made $13 to $15 billion off of this. Okay? That's the money that's going around the world, moving people around the world to our borders because of these incentives.
It's all a large-scale program, as Musk said earlier. Give them all the incentive that they need to come to America, and make sure that the cartels become billionaires, allow the human sex trafficking, all the fentanyl, just it pours into the nation. But most importantly, we've got new voters. This is brought to you by the Democrat Party. In a miracle victory. This is from the January issue of the Trumpet, just a couple months ago. It says, again, in losing and then recovering the presidency, Donald Trump returns to power much stronger than he otherwise would have been. Yet look at what he did with the border in a matter of days. A couple more days, you've got an evening of the tariffs that, as I said, the world's not going to respond to with kindness. But my father says here, miraculously, the theft of the 2020 presidential election actually worked to Trump's advantage. Deep corruption was exposed throughout the government, in business, technology, mainstream media, and in other arenas. This is why, even as our forecast was Donald Trump's coming back, but here's why there's an interruption. Because God wants to expose the filth. He wants to expose the sickness, and it's still being exposed. They come in illegally. They get automatic payments from Joebama. They go right on Medicare. They get a Social Security number automatically. And then they can register to vote. And they actually did. They actually did vote. I mean, it's like it's layer upon layer of corruption. One sin right on top of another sin on top of another sin. And it's being exposed. My father said the radical left's agenda proved to be oppressive and dangerous, and Americans rejected it. Trump's Make America Great Again goals of closing the border, deporting illegal migrants, expanding energy production, revitalizing the economy, securing elections, draining the Washington swamp, and shrinking the government has more support than ever. He got in there, and the border, it was closed in about 6-7 days. That's from just a couple months ago. In January of 2021, my father was talking about Trump staying in power or somehow getting back in. And then when that didn't happen in the time frame that he thought that it would, he came out and said, look, Joe Biden's currently in the Oval Office, fraudulently, but here's why Trump is still coming back. The Bible says so. He says, I am certain, this is from 5 years ago, I am certain that we're about to see some of the biggest frauds exposed perhaps ever. Here's the Doge team going in, just looking for, wasteful spending. And they just stumbled upon this massive, large-scale program to get illegal aliens on the voter rolls. My father says, I don't believe at all that he will depart from the scene. Speaking of Donald Trump in January of 2021, that was Donald Trump's low point. He was banned. I mean, you think about what they did to Le Pen in France. This is what they were trying to do to Trump. Obama gets on the phone and said, hey, you got to ban him. Twitter, Facebook, all of them. He carried out an insurrection. He tried to overthrow the government. That narrative, it's still strong among the ruling class overseas, here in the United States with the radical left. Their precious January 6th narrative. Look at how close they came to destroy him. They raided his house. They went through Melania's closet. I mean, this actually happened here in the United States. Only God could have intervened to turn this around. My father said this, I don't know exactly how this will play out. He wrote this in January 2021, but I believe God is allowing it to happen this way to ensure that the corruption and evil in America is exposed. Yet another pretty dramatic fulfillment of a Bible prophecy. There are so many, and you hear about them on this program, on the Key of David, at our website, thetrumpet.com, in our magazine, which we offer without cost or obligation. Just call our 800 number and request a free 1-year subscription to the Trumpet magazine. That's all we have time for on today's show, the fastest moving hour in broadcasting. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. Thank you for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you again tomorrow.